strapped under his arms and at his hip. For all Eli knew, Hank could have had 3 more besides the 44, 45, and Derringer. Ever since he'd lost his left eye, he seemed one twitch away from gunning down anyone in his sight. That twitchiness made it awfully hard for anyone to sneak up on him, and he prided himself on being able to get to anyone before he could be hurt again. Those things made him a perfect spy.
"There's 5 in all," he said with absolute certainty. "If you see 2 up front, that leaves 3 in the wagon."
"You'd stake our lives on it?" Jake asked.
"Because that's what we'd be doing. I watched them load up myself."
Jake showed Eli an ugly grin and slapped the younger man on the shoulder.
"All right, then. I suppose we should get moving before all the money in that wagon gets away."
Eli looked down at the trundling wagon as if it were a fat, limping goose on Christmas Eve. "No danger of that. We'd be able to hear it from a mile away even if we did let it get out of our sight." "How much money are we talking about again?" Cody asked. Jake was looking down at the wagon hungrily as he told him,
"At least 20,000. You hear any different, Hank?"
The Scarecrow man shrugged.
"They loaded up a few strong boxes. If I could get into them things, we wouldn't need the young'un."
Patting the youngest member of the gang once more on the shoulder, Jake said,
"That's right. Eli here can crack open the devil's own coin purse, ain't that so?"
"Yeah," Eli said. "It is." Neither Jake nor any of the other men in the gang knew for certain whose money was down there. They'd heard rumors of a bank shipping funds to cover a payroll or provide a loan to a large customer with deep pockets, but none of them had cared enough to ferret out the truth. There were even rumors that some businessman was shipping a bribe to a politician, but when there was a large batch of cash involved, speculations were bound to arise. Those fires were stoked even higher when that money was ferried about in a rolling spectacle like a crudely armored wagon. More than likely, the money was just a payroll being shipped by a company that had been robbed one too many times already. All most of the gang cared about was that the money was inside the wagon, and there was lots of it. But there was a different kind of glint in Eli's eyes when he stared down at that trail. It was a dull yet intense thing that hinted at a hotter fire deep beneath his surface. "Yeah," he said. "Let's get moving." The gang mustered like a disciplined army regiment. They kept low so as not to skyline themselves before enough of the ridge was between them and the men riding on the wagon below. When it was safe to move faster, they broke into a run toward the horses that were tethered to trees nearby. Having already scouted out the area while waiting for the wagon to roll by, all of the men knew their way down the narrow path around the ridge, through a stand of trees, and across a short stretch of bushes that had been turned into scorched brambles by an unforgiving sun. It was no surprise for Jake to fire the first shot, and when Hank joined in, Eli's world became a mush of cacophonous sound. Despite the horse's jostling movement, he kept his eyes locked on the wagon. Even as the animal wove between pits left by deep puddles or jumped over a fallen tree, Eli kept his eyes glued to the wagon. As soon as the ground in front of him leveled out, he snapped his reins and rode ahead of the outlaw pack.
"You 2 move around to the other side of that contraption," Jake shouted. "I'll see to it the kid don't get himself killed."
Cody and Hank peeled away to circle around the back of the wagon. Compared to the horses that had swarmed around it, the iron-encrusted vehicle might as well have been standing still. It was far from defenseless, however, as rifle barrels poked out from the slits in its side to spout smoke and lead at the gang. Bullets hissed through the air past Eli's head, causing him to duck down as if that would be enough to keep him safe for the remainder of the journey. Before the rifle rounds could get any closer, they were diverted toward a greater threat. Howling like a mad dog, Jake gripped his reins in one hand and a .44 Smith & Wesson in the other. Rather than fire wildly at the wagon, he gazed along the top of his barrel as if he had all the time in the world to take his shot. When he squeezed his trigger, sparks flew from the edge of one of the slits in the wagon's armor, and angry curses echoed within. More shots cracked through the air on the other side of the wagon as the second half of the gang was greeted by another batch of riflemen. Eli tapped his heels against his horse's sides and surged forward as the spark in his eyes grew to a roaring flame.
"Bring this thing to a halt,"
Jake bellowed.